I remember the night I met him, the dim glow of the bar lights, the soft hum of jazz in the background, and the weight of a long workday pressing against my shoulders. I wasn't looking for love, just a quiet drink and a moment to breathe. And then, there he was. Samuel. He had that restless energy, the kind that made him seem like he was always chasing something just out of reach. He struck up a conversation, flashing a charming but slightly desperate smile, and before I knew it, we were deep in a discussion about dreams, ambition, and the life he swore he was destined for. He didn't have much, not in his wallet, not in his life, but his words were rich with promise. "I have big plans," he had said, eyes flickering with a hunger I mistook for passion. I believed him. Maybe because I wanted to. Maybe because for once, I wanted to be part of someone's journey, not just my own. So I listened, I encouraged, and when the bill came, I paid. A small thing, really, but now, looking back, I realize it was the first of many, many times I would. Falling in love with him was easy. Too easy. He was charming in that raw, unpolished way, making grand gestures that masked the gaps in his reality. He didn't have stability, but I did. And so, I gave. Money, advice, support. I invested in him the way I would in a promising business, believing in his potential, even when there was little to show for it. I helped him open his tiny store, connected him with the right people, made sure he had everything he needed to succeed. I told myself that love wasn't about what someone had, it was about who they could become. And he did become someone, just not the man I thought he would be. I watched Samuel grow, piece by piece, dollar by dollar. What started as a struggling little shop soon turned into something bigger, more polished, more successful. But success didn't come from sheer luck or talent. It came from me. I was the one who found the right suppliers, the one who paid off debts when things got tight, the one who smoothed over his impulsive mistakes. And through it all, I told myself it was worth it. That love wasn't just about what we took, but what we gave. At first, he was grateful, or at least he pretended to be. Late-night talks where he'd hold my hand and whisper, "I couldn't do this without you." Small kisses between shelves of merchandise, moments where he made me believe I was part of something bigger, our future, our empire. And so I kept pushing, kept giving, kept believing. Because that's what love was, wasn't it? Believing in someone even when they doubted themselves, holding on even when the weight of it all rested on my shoulders alone. But something shifted. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. The gratitude in his eyes turned into something else. Expectation. He no longer said thank you when I transferred money into his account. He no longer looked at me the same way when I walked into a room. And one day I realized he had stopped asking for help. Not because he didn't need it, but because he knew it would come, no matter what. My generosity had become routine. My sacrifices had become invisible. And Samuel? He had started to look at the world differently, not with desperation, not with hunger, but with entitlement. The more his business flourished, the more distant he became. The man who once hung on my every word now barely looked up when I spoke. Conversations grew shorter, his attention always elsewhere, on new investments, new clients, new opportunities. And then there were the glances, not at me, but at other women. Women who were thinner, taller, more striking. Women who hadn't spent years building him up, who hadn't sacrificed their time, money, and energy to make his dreams come true. I told myself I was imagining it, that he was just stressed, caught up in the whirlwind of success. I excused the late nights, the sudden business trips, the way he had started to hesitate before saying, "I love you." But deep down, I knew something had changed. Or maybe he had never changed at all. Maybe I was just finally seeing him for what he had always been, a man who took without ever intending to give back. And yet I still held on, because I loved him, because I had built my life around him, because I thought, if I just love him harder, if I just give a little more, he'll see me again. I had been there when he had nothing, and now, standing beside him as he thrived, I refused to believe I was no longer part of his vision. But love is a funny thing. It blinds you, softens you, makes you ignore the cracks in the foundation, until one day, the entire structure comes crashing down. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. No warning, no fight, just a single, life-shattering sentence. I deserve someone better than you. I remember the way he said it, calm, emotionless, like he was stating a fact rather than tearing my world apart. We were sitting at our dining table, the same one I had bought when we moved in together. The same one where I had planned our future, helped him strategize his business, mapped out ways to make his dreams come true. And now, here he was, looking me in the eye, telling me I was no longer enough. At first, I laughed, a short, breathless chuckle, because surely this was a joke. Samuel, the man I had built from the ground up, was leaving me? Trading me in like an old investment that had served its purpose? But as I searched his face, I saw no hesitation, no guilt, just cold certainty. He had already made up his mind, and then, just like that, he was gone. No long explanations, no tearful goodbyes, just a packed suitcase, a door closing behind him, and the hollow echo of my own disbelief. I sat there for hours, staring at the empty space he left behind. The silence in the apartment felt suffocating, pressing down on me like a weight I couldn't shake. My mind ran in circles, trying to make sense of it. How? Why? Hadn't I given him everything? Hadn't I been the one who stood by him when no one else would? But the answer was clear, cruel in its simplicity. Samuel had never loved me. Not the way I had loved him. I was never the destination, only the vehicle that got him there. And now that he had what he wanted, he didn't need me anymore. The realization should have made me cry. It should have shattered me completely. And for a while, it did. Grief hit like a tidal wave, dragging me under. I replayed every moment, every sacrifice, every time I had put his needs before mine, believing it meant something. I let the pain consume me, curling into myself, drowning in the weight of it. But then, something shifted. A fire, slow but steady, ignited in my chest. The tears dried, the grief hardened, and in its place, something else emerged. Rage. Not the kind that makes you reckless, but the kind that sharpens you. The kind that whispers, "No, this isn't the end. This is just the beginning." I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to chase after him, demand answers, or crumble under the weight of his rejection. No, Samuel didn't deserve my tears. He didn't deserve the privilege of knowing just how deeply he had wounded me. What he deserved was something far worse. Consequences. The world had been kind to him. Too kind. He had taken and taken, never once thinking about the people he left behind in his pursuit of something better. And for a while, I had let him. I had watched him rise, believing that my love, my devotion, my sacrifices would tether him to me. But I was wrong. Samuel had only ever been loyal to one thing, his own ambition. But here's the thing about ambition. It makes you blind. It makes you reckless. And Samuel had been reckless in more ways than one. He thought he had played the perfect game, outgrown me, outsmarted me. He thought he had won. He had no idea the kind of woman he had underestimated. Revenge wasn't an impulse. It wasn't a rash decision fueled by heartbreak or fury. No, this was something colder, more calculated. Samuel had taken years of my life, drained me, used me, and discarded me like a worn-out investment. He thought he was untouchable, that I would disappear quietly, licking my wounds in the shadows. He was wrong. I started small. I combed through every detail of his business, the accounts I had helped balance, the permits I had pushed through, the deals I had smoothed over. And the deeper I dug, the clearer it became. Samuel wasn't just an ungrateful bastard, he was a sloppy one. Paper trails of missing money, backdoor deals that reeked of illegality, transactions that, with the right eyes, could tear his world apart. So I gathered every invoice, every falsified document, every whispered deal he thought was too buried to surface. Not once did I reach out. Not once did I let him suspect that, just beyond the shine of his newfound success, a storm was quietly building. And when I was ready, I made sure it would hit him with the force of an earthquake. I didn't confront him. That would have been too easy, too emotional. And Samuel? He didn't deserve the satisfaction of knowing I was angry. No, this needed to be silent, precise, the kind of revenge that doesn't just ruin a man, but makes him realize, too late, that he never saw it coming. So I played the waiting game. I watched from a distance as he flaunted his success, parading around as if he had built his empire on his own. I watched as he spent money he hadn't earned, entertained clients who trusted him blindly, and lived in the illusion that his rise had been inevitable. He had no idea that, underneath the surface, his entire foundation was cracking. And when the time was right, I struck. A single, carefully placed report, anonymously filed, backed by undeniable evidence. It didn't take long. The moment the authorities caught wind of it, they pounced. Investigations were launched, accounts frozen, suppliers questioned. Samuel, once the self-proclaimed mastermind of his own success, suddenly found himself at the center of a legal hurricane. And the best part? He had no idea where it had come from. The first sign of his downfall came in whispers, clients pulling out of deals, investors hesitating, rumors swirling about financial discrepancies. Samuel, ever the arrogant fool, brushed it off. He thought he could talk his way out of anything, that charm and bravado could fix what was coming for him. Then came the officials. They didn't knock politely. They arrived in force. Auditors, investigators, men in suits with folders thicker than Samuel's ego. They combed through his records, questioning every shady deal, every missing dollar, every transaction that couldn't be explained. The press caught wind of it next. The successful businessman, the self-made entrepreneur, now drowning in fraud allegations. I watched it unfold with a kind of satisfaction I had never known before. This wasn't just justice. It was a lesson. He had taken from me, stripped me down to nothing, thinking I would simply disappear. But I had rebuilt myself in silence. And now, as he fought to keep his world from crumbling, I knew Samuel wasn't just losing his business. He was losing everything, and I was just getting started. The day it all came crashing down, I wasn't there to see it in person. I didn't need to be. The news traveled fast, spreading like wildfire through the business world. Headlines painted the perfect picture. Entrepreneur under investigation for fraud. Authorities shut down local business over financial crimes. From success to scandal, the rise and fall of Samuel Cortez. I imagined him standing there watching as officers raided his office, as employees whispered behind his back, as clients he once charmed refused to take his calls. Samuel had built his world on borrowed money and stolen trust, never stopping to think that the same hands that lifted him up could just as easily pull him down. His bank accounts? Frozen. His investors? Gone. The woman he had left me for? She vanished the moment the scandal broke. He had traded loyalty for vanity, substance for appearances, and now, in the moment he needed someone most, he had no one. And that was exactly what he deserved. Samuel fought, of course. Men like him always do. He denied everything, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, a smear campaign, a jealous competitor trying to ruin him. But the evidence was airtight, the walls closing in faster than he could spin his lies. One by one, his business partners abandoned him. The press tore into him, revealing every misstep, every unethical deal, every corner he had cut to get ahead. I watched from a distance, sipping my coffee as reporters shoved microphones in his face, demanding answers he didn't have. His once confident stride had turned into a desperate shuffle, his designer suits replaced with something less polished, less sure of itself. He was unraveling, and the world was watching. But the real moment of satisfaction came when I saw the video, the one where he stood outside his now seized storefront, his voice cracking as he begged for a second chance. "This isn't who I am," he pleaded, looking into the cameras as if he could manipulate the world the way he had manipulated me. "I just need time to fix this." Time. That's what he had taken from me. And now it was the one thing he couldn't buy back. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. The call. His name flashed on my screen like a ghost from a past life. I let it ring, savoring the power shift, the irony of it all. The man who had once dismissed me as not good enough was now reaching out, desperate, broken. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let him sit in his downfall, drowning in the consequences of his own greed. But another part? Oh, I wanted to hear him beg. So I answered. Maria. His voice cracked, barely above a whisper. I made a mistake. I leaned back, letting the silence stretch, making him feel the weight of every moment he had ever made me feel small. He kept talking, voice shaking, full of empty apologies and excuses. He told me he needed help, that I was the only person who had ever truly believed in him, that if I could just give him one more chance, we could fix this. I let him speak, let him pour out his desperation like a man gasping for air, and when he finally fell silent, waiting, hoping, I smiled. I gave you everything, Samuel, I said, voice calm, steady, and you threw me away. Now, you have nothing, just like you deserve. And then, with a slow, deliberate motion, I hung up, blocked his number, and just like that, Samuel ceased to exist in my world. There was no grand celebration, no moment of dramatic vindication, just quiet satisfaction, a peace that settled deep in my bones, the kind that comes when justice is served, not by fate, not by chance, but by my own hands. I didn't look back. Samuel was nothing more than a cautionary tale now, a man who had mistaken kindness for weakness, love for obligation. He had gambled with the one person who would have stood by him through anything, and he had lost. And me? I wasn't the woman he had left behind. I thrived. With him out of my life, I poured my energy back where it belonged, into myself. My career flourished, stronger without the weight of his dreams dragging me down. My social circle grew, filled with people who valued me for who I was, not what I could give them. And for the first time in years, I wasn't saving someone else. I was saving myself. Freedom tasted different now. It wasn't just the absence of Samuel. It was the presence of something I hadn't felt in years. Control. No more worrying about someone else's failures. No more sacrificing my peace to fix another person's mess. My life was mine again, and I guarded it fiercely. People asked me if I felt regret, if I missed him, if there was even a small part of me that wished things had gone differently. My answer never changed. No. Because the truth is, I had already mourned him. I had grieved the man I thought he was, the love I thought we had. That version of me, the one who believed in him blindly, who gave without hesitation, she was gone, and in her place stood someone sharper, stronger, untouchable. One evening, as I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, I thought about Samuel, where he was, what he had become. But the thought didn't linger. I didn't need closure. I didn't need revenge anymore. I had already won. The last time I saw Samuel, it wasn't in person. It was through a screen, a news article buried beneath more important stories. His face was different now. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something hollow, something worn. The headline was simple. Former businessman declares bankruptcy amid legal battles. I skimmed the article, reading about the debts, the failed attempts at rebuilding, the people who had turned their backs on him. He had no money, no power, no influence. The world had moved on, and so had I. That night, I went out with friends, raising a glass to nothing in particular. Just life. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing I had survived. No bitterness, no resentment. Just peace. Because Samuel had spent his whole life chasing something more, something better, and in the end, he was left with nothing. Me? I had everything.